Okay, if we could come to order, please. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss a course of action with regard to Dr. Christopher Ramsey. Dr. Ramsey, a junior resident, conducted unauthorized experiments on hospital property. His action resulted in the creation of a virus that killed 2 people and quarantined the East Wing. The Baldwin, the hospital counsel, will present his findings.
Dr. Quartermain, this is my attorney, Mr. Darren Leopold. We hope we'll be given a chance to defend my actions.
In due time, Dr. Ramsey.
Once we've heard from Mr. Baldwin, you may address the panel. And then we will decide whether or not you will continue to practice medicine at General Hospital.
Speaking. I did? I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, it won't happen again. Thanks. Hey, I sent the lab my notes from rounds instead of my lab slips.
Are you thinking about the hearing?
You know, Chris and his lawyer intend to lay blame for this outbreak on Frank and his chemical dependency.
Yep, and they expect you to help them. You know, Chris has been a weasel from the beginning, but having you testify against your brother, it's a new low.
But Chris, all he wants me to do is tell the truth. It's Frank who wants me to lie.
So what are you gonna do?
I don't know, that's a good question.
Well, after a thorough investigation, the salient facts of this incident are not in question. Dr. Ramsey is a resident, and as such was unauthorized to experiment in the hospital lab without supervision.
The policy for lab use for residents and interns was unclear. I don't mean to sound morbid, but Dr. Jake Marshak pretty much had the run of the place when he was alive.
Dr. Marshak went through the proper channels.
My point is that those channels are vague.
Dr. Ramsey, wasn't the policy made clear after the censure of 2 other residents?
That's true. Doctors Wexler and Scanlan used the lab without approval, and they were reprimanded.
Which left no doubt as to the hospital's position.
But wasn't that closing the barn doors after the horses were already gone?
Mr. Leopold, when this hospital institutes a policy, we expect it to be followed, regardless of the timing.
Well, according to your precedent, then, Dr. Boardman, my client should at the most be reprimanded, not have his privileges revoked.
2 people are dead because of him. I think he deserves a little more than a reprimand.
Not to mention the fact that he has jeopardized this hospital's liability coverage, exposing us to an assortment of lawsuits.
What kind of litigation could we face, Lee?
Oh, wrongful death, negligence, vicarious liability, personal injury, the list goes on. I've had to hire extra staff to field the calls to my office.
Considering the nature of the charges and Dr. Ramsey's previous disciplinary problems, can you see any justification in letting him remain in the residency program?
Well, given the exposure we've already suffered, I believe that retaining Dr. Ramsey would be seen as a gross error in judgment on the part of this board.
You been called into the hearing yet?
No.
Hey, the way I acted last night, claiming you owe me for putting you through school,
I know what my obligations are, Frank. I don't need you to throw them in my face.
It was wrong of me to say that. I wanted you to go to med school, and I would have done anything to get you there.
I wouldn't be Dr. Scanlan if it weren't for you.
So we stick together?
Always have.
Look, Joe, I'm willing to accept my share of responsibility for the outbreak. I took the vial. But if Ramsey had told me what he was doing, or if he would have come forward immediately with what he knew, maybe the flu could have been contained and people wouldn't have died.
You don't have to convince me that this is mainly Chris's fault.
He's trying to make me look like some whacked-out junkie, so I'll take the fall for this.
Be honest with me, Frank. Are you clean?
I was telling you the truth last night. I didn't use your DEA number to call in prescriptions for myself. It was a setup.
I believe you.
I appreciate that. But what are you going to tell the board?
I'll tell them that you didn't call in those prescriptions, and I believe you.
And if that doesn't work?
It's going to have to work, Frank.
Well, I talked to Ferguson. He said I could retake the drug test, but even with a clean showing, I doubt if I'll get my job back.
There are plenty of other ambulance companies out there.
But getting them to hire me without a reference is going to be tough. It's going to be impossible if they think that I forged prescriptions.
Well, we'll just convince everyone that you didn't.
The only way to do that is if you say you called in the prescriptions yourself.
So you think me lying to the board is the only way to salvage your reputation?
I do. I do. And it's only a little white lie. The prescriptions themselves weren't illegal.
Demerol can be used to alleviate pain during detox.
I know you hate this.
Okay. I will do this for you, Frank.
Dr. Ramsey has asked me to forego my opening statement. He would like to speak in his own defense.
All right, fine.
First of all, I will never be able to express the depth of my sadness over what's happened. No apology could ever suffice. But if you allow me to remain in this program, I will spend every waking hour making up for it.
You cannot restore the lives that have been lost.
I understand that. But it doesn't mean I won't make an effort to offer support to the victims' families. Now, yes, I did use the lab without authorization. I was experimenting with DL-56 because I believe it could be of tremendous benefit to mankind.
Are you suggesting that you were trying to save the world with your work, Dr. Ramsey?
That may sound far-fetched, but I saw what this medication did for a man whose injuries were so severe, he wasn't expected to last more than 12 hours post-op.
Frank Scanlan.
Yes, Frank Scanlan. DL-56 regenerated his cardiac accelerator nerve, bringing him back from the dead. Now, the compound may have some kinks, but...
Kinks? From the data we've seen, the side effects are horrendous.
In the early stages, yes, Mr. Baldwin, they were. And that's why Dr. Karen Wexler, who discovered DL-56, abandoned her research. I simply felt it deserved more time and effort.
Your enthusiasm does not excuse your failure to get project approval.
I didn't want to give up on something that could save lives. Now, before the quarantine, I made a major breakthrough. DL-56 was stable. It was ready for an expanded human trial. And I want to make it perfectly clear to this board that I was following hospital protocol for lab safety.
If you were so diligent, how do you explain the disaster that followed your breakthrough?
I believe the question here today should be, who caused that disaster?
Frank Scanlan stole a marked contaminated sample of the drug. He then removed the vial from the hospital premises, spreading the contaminant.
Frank Scanlan is not an employee of this hospital. This hearing is to determine the culpability of your client.
Dr. Ramsey does have a limited amount of responsibility, but I would hate to see this board take an action that would cause the reputation of this hospital to decline any further.
Your point being?
With this incident following on the heels of the general homicide murders, this facility is becoming known as the hospital that kills. Lance Pharmaceuticals is prepared to go to the mat. I won't have my client be a scapegoat for your latest disaster.
So you're suggesting that we condemn Frank Scanlan because he works for the paramedic contractor, not the hospital?
If a door closes, look for an open window.
I didn't come here today to point fingers. But the truth is, that toxin would never, ever have gotten out of the lab if it wasn't for Frank Scanlan.
Gentlemen, would you excuse us? We need to reconvene for a private session. I'll call you back in shortly.
Of course. Could that have gone any better?
Not from where I was sitting. You were good. Equal parts humility, pride, and contrition.
You sound optimistic.
Your performance in there raised my hopes.
So do you think they're going to go after Frank Scanlan?
Monica Quartermain needs breathing space, and this institution can't handle more bad ink.
And pinning the blame on someone outside the hospital is the perfect solution.
Going after Frank Scanlan will be perceived as a cover-up to protect one of our own.
I don't want our reputation smeared because some impaired paramedic ripped off our lab. We'll never see another dime of grant money.
Well, I would like to hear as much as I can before we condemn or absolve. I think we need to hear from other sources about Frank Scanlan's involvement.
Dr. Adams to cardiology. Dr. Monique Adams to cardiology.
You know, why Cooper and Julie didn't offer you to begin with is a mystery to me. Could have saved us all a lot of trouble.
It's pretty harsh coming from a choir boy like you. What happened to that righteous indignation that I've come to know and love?
Tell me, Chris, how do you get your hands on my DEA number and then phone in those prescriptions for Frank?
Is that what he told you? Well, that's a good one. You know, I figured he would go with something like the devil made me do it. Wake up, Joe. Your brother's an addict. Addicts lie.
The only liar here is you. And pinning this on Frank will only be seen by the board as a sad, pathetic attempt to keep your job, and it's not going to work.
Joe, the board has asked me to come down here to lay out the facts. That's all I'm doing.
So are you going to tell the board that you used Frank as a lab rat?
Hey, I thought I was helping Frank by giving him DL-56.
Yeah, helping him to an early grave.
Frank thought he would die without those injections. Now, as a physician, I
Oh, come off it, Chris! You knew damn well that Karen and I were weaning him off. You knew what kind of shape he was in, and you nailed him when he was down.
Is it so hard for you to understand that maybe you and I both felt a moral duty to do what we each thought was right?
That you have is to yourself and to the money that you dreamed of making off the drug patent.
Come on. I don't remember seeing you shying away from the possibility of an early retirement when you and Karen were working on that formula.
You know why, Chris? That's because we stopped when we realized how dangerous it was, but not you. You saw Frank as a huge dollar sign, and you didn't stop despite the dangers that we all knew about.
All right, just calm down. Now, your brother just had started on the corrected formula. Did you hear me? The corrected formula, the one perfected by me. He was in good hands.
Yeah, well, if your treatment was going so well, then why the hell are we in the middle of this mess?
That outbreak happened because your brother is a junkie. Now, my only mistake was not recognizing an addict when I saw one. What I thought was Frank's will to live turned out to be another drive to get high.
You are such a bastard, you know that. If you would have minded your own business to be doing this, Frank would have been off at DL-56 months ago.
Right. Look, he's your brother. And it's understandable that you're trying to protect him. And despite what you want to think about me, I take no pleasure in kicking the guy when he's down. But the board wants the facts. What choice do I have?
It's the same old tune with you, Chris. Everybody has choices.
We need to go over a few things before they call us back in.
Okay. You know, hindsight's 20/20, Joe. I only wish that I'd seen how out of control Frank was.
You look like you've just been Ramsey.
He is playing this like he is Albert Schweitzer, doing what is best for the good of humanity.
Dr. Wexler, the board would like to see you at once.
Okay, tell them I just have to check on a patient and I'll be right there. Boy, I didn't think I'd even have to testify, let alone go first.
Listen, Karen, what are you going to say? The board asks you about Frank.
I'll make sure the board hears a sympathetic voice when it comes to Frank, after all he's been through. But that said, I'm only going to testify to what I know. I'm not going to lie.
Dr. Rodriguez, 715, please. Dr. Roland
After you.
Rodriguez, 715.
I prefer to watch my back around you, thanks. After you.
Thank you for coming, Dr. Wexler. We have called you here to testify to whatever you may know about DL-56 and the epidemic that occurred here at the hospital.
I'll tell you whatever I can.
First off, I want to say that your efforts to get a handle on the virus was nothing short of spectacular. You developed the formula, but this board in no way holds you responsible for the problems surrounding it.
Thank you.
Now, now tell us about DL-56.
All the work I did on it was in compliance with good laboratory practices. I did my work at Baldwin Labs.
Did you outsource any analysis?
I never got far enough to need outside help. The preclinical study used in-house test animals. I determined that the substance was too dangerous for further study.
Would you elaborate?
As a therapeutic, it modulated immunity. It regenerated nerve tissue at the cellular level, but it evidenced major side effects.
And what were those?
Sky-high levels of adrenaline and testosterone that caused abnormal aggression bordering on the homicidal.
So the behavior that you saw in the test animals caused you to end the research?
I felt an ethical obligation to do so, yes.
Dr. Wexler, were you aware that Dr. Ramsey was able to eliminate the side effects?
I heard he was making that claim.
Well, it seems you were premature in your assessment of the medicine.
That remains to be seen.
Dr. Ramsey may have bent a few lab rules, but the integrity of his science is beyond question. Did my client, Dr. Wexler, appear distraught when he learned that people were getting sick after one of his experiments?
Dr. Ramsey had contracted the illness by the time I saw him. I can't judge his state of mind.
But isn't it true that Dr. Ramsey attempted to develop an agent to stop the epidemic?
What Dr. Ramsey did after he let the genie out of the bottle seems irrelevant.
I believe it shows his commitment to being a good physician. Dr. Wexler, where did you begin your research?
I began my work here in the hospital, but then I moved.
The experiments you did here were unauthorized. Your lab privileges were revoked. I have an order here signed by the late Dr. Devlin prohibiting you from using the lab.
That was a misunderstanding after my work had been plagiarized.
I see. What can you tell us about Frank Scanlan?
It's public knowledge he was treated with DL-56.
He was hooked on it. The superflu was unleashed on the public because Frank Scanlan stole a vial of it from a hospital lab.
Frank didn't create this contagion. You can't pin this on him.
But that is your opinion, Dr. Wexler, but we are trying to determine the facts here.
The fact is, Chris Ramsey cultured Nepalese flu with an unpredictable drug and created a mutant strain that killed 2 people.
But who exposed it to the public? Frank Scanlan.
Frank had no idea what it was.
The point is, he was reckless and didn't care.
That will be all for now, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Phillips to obstetrics. Dr. Robin Phillips to obstetrics.
Not bad.
Chris is doing exactly what you thought he would.
I knew it. I mean, that is the only play that he has.
Chris's lawyer is trying to paint Frank as some crazed druggie that just needed a fix and started this whole thing. Unfortunately, Joe, it's not entirely untrue.
Yeah, well, Chris gets to pretend that he's only working for the good of science.
Hey, I hear Chris has some hotshot lawyer from Lance Pharmaceuticals representing him in there.
That creep is from Lance?
You've testified?
Yeah, I'm the last one today. Frank, I'm sorry. That guy's doing a number on you, and I did what I could, but I don't think it helped much.
Ramsey is trying to wipe me out.
All right, well, then we won't let him.
Damn it, it wasn't enough that Chris is screwing me out of the deal with Lance. He's got them helping him do it.
What deal, Frank? You made a deal? Are you telling me that you are in bed with Lance Pharmaceuticals?
Frank.
Was this a strategic omission on your part, or were you planning on telling me?
When the time was right, what's the big deal?
You're asking me to put my career on the line and lie to save your butt, while you don't even see it fit to tell me the truth about your involvement?
Come on, Joe, I was going to let you in on everything.
No, Frank, that is the last. You give me one reason why I should believe anything that comes out of your mouth.
Tomorrow on Good Morning America, a former first daughter, Maureen Reagan, gives us an extraordinary glimpse into her dad's silent world of Alzheimer's disease. Tomorrow on Good Morning America.